So what do you guys reckon we do for this intro?
Don't know.
What
Really.
we got? Got any plans? You're the creative one, Rich.
Yeah, I did have a few quirky ideas, but I don't know, man. They're a bit extravagant, I think. I know it's all about
over the top, are they, son?
Yeah, I know it's all about antivirus stuff and all this jazz, but it might be a bit too corny,
Yeah.
I
know,
suppose so.
Corny 2012.
Corny 2012. Yeah, exactly.
I suppose so.
I don't know. I don't know. What do you think,
Well, I mean, as long as we can end on this is
Hi there, welcome to SteegCast. This is episode 6 of season 3. Is that the right season?
It is the right
yeah,
season.
right. So, yeah,
Cracking.
season 3.
Good God, how time fucking flies. So today, unfortunately, we haven't got Sean with us. Hopefully, he'll be back next month. But he's just got some. What's he got? Some prior engagements, I think.
Prior engagement, is it, son?
Yeah,
Something
Christ.
like that. He's got.
Yeah, Christ, he would
God,
say. That's what he would say if he was here. Yeah, Christ.
So before we get into it, how are you guys? What have you been up to?
Very well, thank you. All through.
All right, yeah, not bad.
Been up to much?
Are you going to do it?
Oh, it's getting bigger, son. It's getting bigger.
We went out. Well, 3 of us, me, Gareth, and Sean, went out for Borough's 35th the other day.
Celebrate my
In,
35th anniversary of being born and whatnot. My birthday, yes. 35 years old. Now, you'd never think it. They'd never think it.
God, you travelled all the way over to Bristol as well, didn't you? I heard. Little birdie
Bristol,
told
yes.
me.
Bristol, craft beer
Bristol.
haven. Bristol, lots of beers and things. Beers and whatnot.
Oh, brill. That's what we like to hear, son. Do you enjoy?
I certainly did. Weather was outside. It's in my hometown at least today. It's been permanently dark all day and raining, so it was nice to actually have some sunlight and while we could and whatnot. And yeah, it was very nice.
You know, I'm actually not minding the rain these days, considering I'm like growing peppers out the back and all that. So
Good
I
for
don't
the peppers, exactly.
don't
Very
have to
good
go
for the
outside
peppers.
anymore.
How are the peppers doing?
They're doing really well, actually. Do you want me to go grab them quick?
If you've got time, yeah. I mean, by all means.
I'm gonna go show off a pepper. Bear with.
By all means. Yeah. For the benefit of the tip, Tom is going to show us some of his peppers he's been growing. He's got various different peppers, I believe, all different types, different sizes. I don't really know anything about peppers. Oh, there you go.
You're just
God.
waffling to kill time.
That's shot up, haven't it?
So I got this one. I call this one the twin because there's 2 in this one. I don't know if you can see.
That's 2 peppers.
There's 2 different pepper plants that have grown in one pot.
So
pepper
2 breeds then. Is there 2 breeds of peppers?
I hope so. Yeah, that'd be cool. Like if they did kind of cross color, like that'd be awesome. But it's going well, son. It's going well. First time I've kept anything alive for longer than a week. So.
So what are your intention with all these peppers then? What are you going to use them culinary or?
Good God, I always make with fresh ingredients. Son, you got to make with fresh ingredients. Gordon Ramsay will fucking tan your ass otherwise.
What are the ingredients?
Yep, we'll probably make some lovely campfire stew out of this. Make some lovely. Oh God, peppers going everything, son. Everything. I could eat them raw as well. I fucking love them. Like.
Carolina Reapers, is that?
Good God, I have got an jalapeno plant as well. I don't think. No, I'm not going to get that one. Bear with.
Tom Pepper. You got Tom Pepper there. Christ. Well, we've all got to have hobbies at the end of the day, haven't we? So how it goes.
Well, yeah.
There he goes. Tom's very much into tea as well, though, aren't you? He can't hear me a minute. He's gone. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Yeah, I was just saying you're very much into tea as well, aren't you, Tom? Into tea, heavily into tea.
I love my tea. Yeah, I was thinking about looking into how you grow your own tea. I know it comes from a tea leaf, obviously, like so.
Tea leaves, yeah.
Shouldn't I wonder how much you need to actually make a brew. I don't want to be brewing something for like 2 years to come up with 1 cup of tea.
Well, you've got a bit of garden space for it, son. You might be alright.
Exactly. I looked into pineapples as well, but apparently one pineapple takes about 2 years to grow.
Really?
Is that possible
Mental,
in the
yeah,
UK?
it only bears one fruit every
What?
crazy.
Have we
like.
got the climate? Have we got the climate? For
They do
that?
look really cool when they're growing though.
You should make some pepper infused tea leaves, son.
Pepper infused tea leaves.
Imagine that.
Oh, now we're cooking.
Hybrid, yeah.
Now
Probably
we're
tastes
cooking.
revolting, that would, but I'll be honest with you.
I've got spiced imperial tea, which is literally spiced tea, that's fucking lush. Like, love that shit.
Love that shit.
Okay, so anyway, have you guys heard in the news about this fella, John McAfee?
Certainly have, son.
Yeah.
McAfee.
McAfee. I think it's McAfee. I've called him John McAfee. I don't know why, but it is McAfee. You're right. But good God, he's dead.
Oh Christ!
I have heard, son. I had heard, son. Definitely. But what you got to say on the matter?
Oh well, pretty much, son. I've written up his entire life story. If you want to hear of it,
Entire life story.
pretty
Jesus
much,
Christ.
yeah, start to finish. Bit of an A to Z on John McAfee. Are we good to dive in?
By all means, son. Enlighten
Crack
me.
on, son.
All
crack
right,
on.
grand. So, his early life. So, I was born as a baby on the 18th of September 1945 in a US military base at the Forest of Dean, Gloucestershire. My father was an American soldier who was stationed there at the time, and my mother, who was born and bred British, though after my birth we moved to Virginia, America. You'd think there'd be a difference between the two countries, but there's not that much. I feel as much British as I do American. The life of a soldier in the US Army must have taken its toll and been pretty difficult, as when I was 15, my father actually took a gun and he shot himself in the face.
Christ.
Pretty grim, as you can imagine. So,
I did not know that.
I did
no,
a bit of
didn't.
background on his father. There's obviously not much out there, but apparently he was like quite abusive throughout. You know, I suppose in like 1945, men were different to as they are.
They had to be
Yeah.
tougher and
No,
stuff back then, didn't
it's
they?
a different world. It's a different world back then, but like,
Yeah.
sorry to go on a little bit of a tangent, but you had like, I learned not long ago that I think the UK was one of the last it was the last place in Europe anyway, when they were still in the European Union, to abolish caning in schools.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah, and that was like in the 80s, was it? 80s?
Good God, yeah. Kane in the grand scheme of things, that really wasn't that long ago.
I think it was 80s in public schools and then 90s in private schools. I think that's the distinction that is stopped. You know, and
Well,
that's quite really recent when you think about it.
That's not just beating your kid, it's other people beating your kid. Like,
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
mental.
Yeah, and they did polls on whether people think it's worth it and whether it makes a difference, and the results were in favour of caning by like more or less the same margins as Brexit.
Oh, that says a lot.
That's the UK all over.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there we go.
So, after the death of John McAfee's old man, there wasn't much to do but for him to turn to drink and drugs himself. So life thereon became a whirlwind of drink, drugs, college and girls. As if, you know, that's the life of most teens in early 20s. But at the age of 22, in 1967, he received a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Roanoke College, where later in life he would receive a Doctor of Science degree in 2008. So, fresh from college, he applied for jobs here and there, but his first notable job was with the Missouri Pacific Railroad. And he remembers talking to Wired magazine, and this is where he kind of transitioned from the drink and a little bit of drugs to more serious drugs. So he used to go to work tripping on acid for like days at a time. And one day he was sold some DMT and he sniffed a line. He didn't really feel much off that one. So what he done was tip the whole bag out and sniff the whole thing in one fucking go.
Jesus.
So man, all fucking hell broke loose. So the Wired article then, I think I may be able to find that for Rich to kind of put up on the screen.
Yep.
So we got, people were asking him questions, but he didn't understand what they were saying. The computer was spitting out train schedules to the moon, but he couldn't make sense of it. He ended up in a garbage can down St. Louis, hearing voices and desperately hoping that nobody would look at him. He never went back to the Missouri Pacific. Part of him believes that he's still on that trip, that everything then has since been one giant hallucination, and that one day he'll snap out of it and find himself back on his couch in St. Louis listening to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
Great album.
So I think
album for that as well.
so. I think that that as an introduction to McAfee says a lot about who he was as a person, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
So can I just jump back in a little bit? He was born in the UK then, you say, Forest of Dean.
Born in the Forest of Dean on a US military base. This was during coming to the close, just after the Second World War. But yeah, US military base in the Forest of Dean. His father was American and his mother was British.
So when did the family relocate then? Or were we not aware of this?
That would have been
when he was a teen, is it, or something?
I think it was.
He was a kid,
after my birth, we moved to Virginia, America.
Yeah.
I think it literally a nipper, a wee
days
nipper.
Then, yeah. Okay. I'm up to
So
date now.
all that taken into consideration. By the way, I just want to chuck it out there. I may swap between the first and camera's this way. First and third person, because I have actually written this as like a memoir diary style, as I may have said at the start. So it is actually all in first person. So I may flip back and forth there. I'm on a bit of a split personality. I am John McAfee. So all that taken into consideration, I landed a gig in NASA's Institute for Space Studies in 1968. And considering we landed the first people on the moon in 1969, as you can imagine, the place was abuzz with excitement for the Apollo program.
It was their prime time.
That's exactly it. So he actually worked on the Apollo program up until 1970. So yeah, he worked on the Apollo program. According to Wikipedia, I did find a little bit of conflicting information on this, but let's just say he worked on the Apollo program, according to Wikipedia. So at the age of 24, he went to work in Univac as software designer and later to Xerox as an operating systems architect. So this ate up the time then until about 1978, where he joined the Computer Science Corporation as a software consultant. So the consultant then led him into Booz Allen Hamilton. Now apparently these are a pretty big firm. I've heard the name before, but I'm not too familiar. Has anyone?
Never heard of that. No.
No, fair. So that was in 1980 to 1982, and I appreciate that the names and all this are boring to the listener, but they're relevant to the life, so I just chucked it anyway, as fuck it, So that said, it was after that where things started to actually get a bit interesting. So John McAfee then, he was around 37 in 1982 when he left Booz Allen, that's hard to say fast, Booz Allen Hamilton, and jumped ship to Lockheed. This is where he met Brain, and life changed dramatically. So Lockheed Martin, you must have heard of them, in passing at least.
What do they do?
I haven't actually got that written down. I've heard of Lockheed though, but yeah, they're just like software developers at that time. They were. So Brain was actually the first ever computer virus for the PC, and it fascinated McAfee there. So it was the first real opponent that would challenge him in his field, and from there on dedicated himself to battling Brain and develop his own software to combat the virus. And funnily enough, the prototype only took him about a day and a half to write the code to fight the Brain, and it worked. A day and a half. How feasible is that these days, Rich?
It depends how good you are, I guess. So if you like shit hot, then yeah, I couldn't fucking do it, I tell you that much. But just to jump in as well, Tom, Lockheed Martin is an aerospace and defence company.
Okay.
So defence, I imagine that's why he was introduced to Brain then. Defence.
That's what it is, state defence.
In headquarters in Bethesda, Maryland.
Bethesda? Bethesda, you say?
Bethesda, I do.
So in 1987, Christ, he must have been about 42 years of age. Well, that's when he actually founded McAfee Associates. 42 years of age, and then his life started to come together.
That's cool. He was a lot later than life. It goes to show though that some people think, I'm too old to do this now. It goes to show that anything's achievable at any point in life.
Exactly.
Age is just a number, but
yeah, absolutely. That's cool.
Well,
that's cool.
In non-Epstein circles.
Oh.
So 42 years of age, that's when he founded McAfee Associates. and sold the first antivirus software to market. And he had a good ride in the company. It incorporated in Delaware in 1992, and they had the initial IPO, which is initial public offering, in the same year. So apparently, workers have since described the environment of the business as essentially like a cult-like atmosphere, and there are interviews of the old employees describing it as just that. So people are saying that they would work for days at a time, some people sleeping under their desk just to make the boss happy, and that's, the sex parties aside. So there was a group called the Little Foxes, right? And they would give points for having sex in different spots in the office. McAfee was a free spirit, and the company just resembled that, as it was. It takes a new definition to work hard, play hard, I guess.
Fucking hell, man.
Right.
Come on, the puns, Jesus. So what was it? You said they got points for it.
Yeah, they gave points for having sex in different spots in the office.
Was there did they give a breakdown of where these specific areas were more points and less points?
In some interviews, there are I think managers' desks and all that are
that'd be top spot that.
I imagine offices where they're just offices that are just windows for walls.
Yeah,
I bet they are high points ones
proper exhibition and
yeah.
Good God.
And then toilets are probably worth the least amount, and cupboards, all those things.
I don't know. That's quite impressive if you can have sex in a cupboard.
I think reception desk would be a high point there as well, because it's front of house.
Yeah, right there. Someone coming in
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, though, things went sour for McAfee and McAfee and Associates, and in 1994 sold his remaining stake in the company and wanted no further dealings with it. But it's estimated that he made more than $100 million throughout that anyway. So the original brainchild, which is essentially what it was, it was a child between McAfee and the virus himself, Brain. So eventually went through many mergers and ownership changes until Intel bought McAfee in August 2010. It took them 4 years until they rebranded all McAfee-related products as Intel Security. So that made John super happy. He remembers releasing a statement that said something along the lines of, "I am now everlastingly grateful for Intel for freeing me from the terrible association with the worst software on the planet."
Christ.
I'm sure they still use the McAfee name though.
I thought that as well, yeah, it surely was, yeah.
I don't know if it's just my age showing, Life between John leaving McAfee and the acquisition by Intel, that was a bit of a whirlwind as well. So just as he left in 1994, when he was the ripe age of 49, he started a company called Tribal Voice Incorporated, where they created the first internet instant messaging chat platform for Windows.
Christ.
So, that's two major fucking milestones in IT.
What was it called again? Sorry, Tom.
It was called Tribal Voice Incorporated, but
I don't remember that.
they called the actual platform, they called it Powwow.
Powwow.
So, though instant chat's now taken for granted, they pioneered many of the functions still used today. We got voice over IP, a shared whiteboard, built-in speech synthesizer, WAV sound file playing, offline transmittal of instant messages, and they were the first company to allow a user to drag and drop files, which is to be the first company to do that. That's fucking huge.
Oh God.
So that revolutionized file sharing. They also had interoperability between AOL and MSN chat platforms when they eventually caught up. I think on MSN, you could only speak to MSN people, couldn't you? Or could you speak to AOL?
No, I think it was just MSN.
MSN contacts, all it was, yeah.
So why the fuck wasn't everyone on Powwow? I'd never heard of it. No.
It just never took off, did it? AOL was AIM, wasn't it? You had AIM.
Oh, yeah.
And I can remember a distinction back in the day where a lot of people in the UK mainly used MSN, and then most of America used AIM.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Because I remember hearing American bands talking about AIM more so than MSN and stuff like that, which is mad considering they're both American companies, right? But I get how one's more popular than the other, but whatever is what it is.
Yahoo Messenger I had for a while, can I just say?
Yahoo Messenger.
There's another one. I never used Yahoo.
No, I can't even remember that one.
Yeah, I did have it at one point.
Good God.
When I was in school, and stuff.
So originally, though, McAfee, he pitched the idea of Tribal Voice as a Native American company run by Native Americans. And as you can imagine, John wasn't a Native American. But as the company grew, they left those sort of references behind. In 2000s, the year 2000, he joined the board of directors of a firewall software company called Zone Labs. And from there on, he considered himself retired. He'd written books on spirituality, he'd opened yoga retreats, and, just general things that retirees do, just open massive retreats in tropical islands. So in his early 60s, that was when the turn kind of started. So 2007 to 2008 brought the most serious financial crash since the Great Depression. That's prior to the COVID recession of 2020. So he had invested and built in mansions across the US, which was in the wrong place at the wrong time, because when the global recession hit, the housing market plummeted, which left loads of his investments unsold, and he had various lawsuits coming in left and right from the fucking flight school, as he says. Now, the flight school, I've got something on that. So he was in a court battle on that. So Arizona court claims that McAfee forced his nephew, Joel Bitto, into instructing an illegal flight operation, encouraging people to perform low-altitude, high-speed flights over unforgiving terrain with no margin for error. So he was battling that in court, as well as like losing millions through these houses.
Why would he even do that? Why is that a thing?
It's unique, I suppose, isn't it?
What was the motive? What was the motive?
Life insurance. So New York Times reported that the personal fortune declined from 100 million down to 4 million. But as he said, that's his business. 2009 came around, and he was in Ambergris Cay in Belize, and there was a CNBC special on what they called the bubble decade. So he told them about the mansions and that he'd sold them, and like at a massive reduced, I wouldn't even call it a profit. And another quest that he had going at the time, which was producing plants for possible medicinal uses here on the land in Belize. So I'd leave that to your imagination as to what these medicinal plants were.
Medical marijuana, perhaps?
Nah, just fucking with you. But you wouldn't put it past someone like him, would you? So in 2010, that's when he started another company called Quorum X, and that would be headquartered in Belize. Now, this company kind of moved away from the tech industry in the aim to produce herbal antibiotics that disrupt something called quorum sensing in bacteria. And apparently that means that they could destabilize the ability for bacteria to congregate, so it could possibly be used in cancer cell communications too. So he got into this by essentially bumping into this girl on the beach called Alison. I haven't written her last name down. You can find it easy online if you wish. But Alison was a microbiologist. She knew all the ins and outs more than he did. He was just like the face and the money man behind it. So Belize being a truly free place if you knew how to tame it. And sadly, he had surrounded himself by people who would say that he was becoming a bit paranoid, I imagine. And that he was going to take over the country. They thought he was a madman. Jesus. Like, sure, things had changed, and he had changed. He'd started taking bath salts, high-end stimulants, drugs that improved the sexual experience called MDPV. He'd be awake for days at a time. At that point, he remembers saying something like, my fragile connection with the world of polite society has, without a doubt, been severed. So that's a pretty strong quote there. So he used to go to really. Yeah. He used to go to a place called Lover's Bar, which was near his compound, where he met several women who he'd become entangled with. And at one point, he actually had 7 girlfriends at one time, all of which who knew each other, and all of which who tried to kill him at least once. And there's interviews from these women who openly admit to attempted murder of John, like. So they claimed that he'd want sex not for 1 or 2 hours, but from morning to day, that he'd get them to shit in his mouth.
Oh my God.
That he'd sometimes make them fuck for a week straight. And in 2018, you can go back and look at this, but there's a tweet from McAfee saying that he'd fucked a humpback whale.
What?
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 Yeah. He was like... I remember seeing it. I haven't written the actual quote down, but it was something like, now you're going to tell me that fucking humpback whale, there's no consent for that. Or something. So essentially, he raped a humpback whale, I suppose. Yeah, that just shows a little bit of his mindset a bit more.
Did he ever have any nights out with Charlie Sheen? It sounds like he would have got on well.
No, with that. Fucking hell.
I don't think any of them would be alive at that point, to be honest. If he had nights out with Charlie, well, when Charlie Sheen was at the height of his
Full of madness.
Yeah, his tiger's blood and all that shit. Like,
what year was that? Because this was about.
It was like 2000. Well, late 2000s.
Yeah, that was around this time then.
Oh, he must have done. Absolutely must have done. Calling it. Must have done.
What, the Charlie Sheen connection?
Yeah, he must have had a night out with Charlie Sheen at some point. Sounds
I
like
imagine
shit.
so, yeah. It's similar worlds colliding, like. Yeah.
So McAfee then, he had people trying to kill him left and right. His girlfriend's trying to kill him. He had these random people trying to kill him as well. We'll jump into that shortly. So he had nobody left to trust. So he decided to turn to the community. So if he couldn't help the people closest to him, at least he could try and help someone. So he tried to feed a bunch of locals, provide them with jobs. He'd employed half the town, and the mayor even recognised that, but that was only for a very brief time. So Alison then, who was heading this research, this is a quote from McAfee, turned out to be far more interested in partying than doing actual work. She would not show up to the lab for days at a time. When she did show up, she was hungover and generally useless. After many months of this, I finally fired her, upon which she went berserk, locked herself in the lab and destroyed what limited research we had created, and left. This was in 2010, and I never saw that again. Now, that's a quote from John, right? I've just got to say, because there is another side to this, obviously, so that's John's retelling of the story. There's a Showtime documentary called Gringo, and that has an interview with Alison, stating that she was terrified of John's change in personality, and when confronting him to quit, he subsequently, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but he subsequently raped her. John denies all of this. Alison told the FBI as soon as she returned to the US, but Belize is outside of the jurisdiction, obviously, and there was nothing that could come of the investigation. So, there's nothing that can come of it, I suppose, which is like sad, really fucking sad.
No.
There was never any justice for that, but I don't think John was really interested in justice, to be fair. Fucking hell.
No.
So there was a situation where a guy had fired a gun outside one of his girlfriend's houses, so he went up there at the end of 2011 to confront the guy. Turns out he was about a quarter of his age, but not that ever bothered him. So he went up there with a black air rifle, but the guy wasn't there. So he told his family that he'd kill the guy if he didn't give him the gun that he used. And, some of these people aren't responsible gun owners, So that dispute put John on a sort of path to securing the area, as I think he'd say. Cleaning up, making sure the community of which he employed half of was safe. So he built his own police station in Belize. And he employed more people to start policing the area. He provided them with arms, like automatic assault rifles,
Private policing,
tear gas. He set up his own police fucking zone, like. He even paid them overtime to patrol the streets at night to stamp out what he'd call the rampant drug dealing in Orange Walk, I think it was called. So some community members didn't really appreciate what he was trying to do, but he reckons they just didn't understand the scope. He said that Carmela was a quiet town, but they didn't know what was actually going on, under the hood, as they say. So he turned former gang members and cops into a sort of personal bodyguard because he thought that he was a prime target for these ex-drug dealers that he was disrupting the trade of. But in realism, he was like accused of making meth. He was accused of essentially making a militia that would protect him at any time from the feds and all that. One time a thug, one of his neighbours called David Milliton, tried to rob his house. He then allegedly called a guy, Tom Manga, Mangar. Did you say that's Manga?
Yeah, it's a
Tom Manga. Yeah. And asked him to hire 3 people to beat Middleton up and drag him into town. Unfortunately, Manga died in the hospital, and this situation was then brought, obviously, to McAfee's doorstep. There was a pretty big time gangster called Mac 10 who was friends with Middleton. He caught wind that he was being accused of hiring these guys to commit this crime, and he was coming after John McAfee. So he arranged a meeting with Mac 10. They sat down, chatted, they got it all straightened out, and Mac 10 and his entourage eventually ended up under McAfee's employment. So 2012, this is where the raid from the Belize PD came in, and I think some people may have seen that video that John McAfee's posted where he's like in his robe with all the women around him. Yeah. So that was 2012, and that was a crazy year for McAfee. So the Belize PD took it upon themselves to raid his house with 42 armed soldiers dressed in full riot gear, carrying fully automatic weapons. He was in bed with his 17-year-old girlfriend at the time. They tried to pin him with unlicensed drug manufacturing, suspected of meth, and possession of an unlicensed weapon. But, you know, the fact that he had 10 weapons and 300 rounds of ammunition confiscated was neither here nor there. So, of course, that fell through, and he was released without a charge or conviction, which is pretty nuts. Like, you know, I suppose, I don't know, if you got like 10 unlicensed weapons, why can't they fucking do you for that?
Yeah.
But it was around that time that he would start seeing menacing figures who he believed were the GSU, which are the gang suppression unit, over the river from the compound. They would just stand there unmoving. He said, this is a quote as well, they come to about 3 feet away, stand around you still. Think about it, it's freaky shit, sir. So he thought that they were after him without a doubt, going to try and kill him. So this was also the year that he was interviewed by the magazine of American Mensa. They had the cheek to ask him if he actually used McAfee Anti-Virus software. So he told them that he takes it off because it's too annoying. And that spawned the idea for the video that he'd go on to upload to YouTube. And he was actually 68 years old when he uploaded that video in 2013. The video itself, if anyone's interested, is titled How to Uninstall McAfee Anti-Virus. And it's pretty fucking funny video. Like.
It's funny.
So he thought that video was a hilarious statement and an exaggeration of how the media had spun the negative coverage of himself. The video has hit around 10 million views. I'm not sure what's on now. It's probably on a lot more now. Seriously though, you know, being the developer of the first antivirus program had made him kind of the more popular hacking target out there. And the hackers would actually see it as a badge of honor. He had to go as far as to changing his IP address several times a day, getting other people to buy his equipment, using pseudonyms, things like that. He never actually used antivirus. He just changed his IP and everything so much that, you know, no one could just track him down. Like, unfortunately, though, in November of that year, his time in Belize was done. His neighbour, an American expat, Greg Fall, was found dead in his house by gunshot. Of course, the authorities would look at John for this, because even one of the PMs, Dean Barlow, called him extremely paranoid and even bonkers. So just because he told Wired in an interview that he evaded Belizean authorities because he was afraid that they'd kill him. So, you know, he was essentially just dodging that. So Fall once threatened to shoot his dogs, but he didn't actually believe he'd do it. They weren't exactly friends, but that doesn't mean he'd go out and kill the guy. One night, though, he awoke and found the dogs had been poisoned. He'd instantly told a reporter about it. Then a few days later, Fall was found dead. Nothing taken from his house, no sign of struggle. And John suspected that they'd come knocking on his door, trying to pin it on him. Like, you know, as they had words and his dogs turned up dead and then Fall turned up dead. So John then was assured, you know, he was determined that Fort Gregory's death was a result of mistaken identity, and the Belizean government were in fact trying to assassinate him, but they got the wrong address. So he booked it. He ran from Belize, and when the cops came knocking, he buried himself in sand and covered his head in a cardboard box to hide for 3 hours.
Bloody hell.
Solid snake, like.
That's mental.
Just in a sandbox, like a fucking cardboard box over your head. Must have balls to pull that off. Good God. But it worked. He then went completely off-grid. He done an interview with Vice, and the stupid bastards gave away his location in Guatemala in December, so they released a photo with the metadata still attached. While in Guatemala, he asked the cartoonist Chad Esley to set up a blog so that he could document a story whilst he was on the run. Eventually, he tried to gain political asylum in Guatemala, but he was refused, and get this, arrested for illegally entering Guatemala. So his asylum was denied, he was being deported back to Belize, and there he was, in a Guatemalan detention centre, faking 2 heart attacks, so his attorney had enough time to file a series of appeals to prevent his deportation back to Belize, so that he could be taken back to the US instead. And on December the 12th, he made his way back to the US soil. Faking heart attacks in a Guatemalan detention centre.
I know. I bet that was something. I can only imagine what like being in a prison in countries like that are like. Must be mental.
Years later, though, he was found liable for Gregory Fall's death, but he said that he's never going to pay the $25 million filed by Fall's family, despite what a federal judge says. He says that I've had 37 lawsuits in 11 years, and I haven't paid a single one, and I'm not going to start now. So these cases are frivolous, he says. I refuse to play the legal extortion game aimed at America's wealthy class. And that's a fucking cheek. I refuse to play the legal extortion game aimed at America's wealthy class. How mad have you got to be to even think that?
You think though, like that guy's family who got killed was asking for money because their family member got killed. Like that in itself tells me that like, I know people do get compensation when a family member dies or whatever, but demanding 25 million seems like, you know, if a close family member dies, you just want it to forget about it and move on.
Yeah, no, I get it. That way they put in a figure on Gregory Fall's death.
On his life.
On his person. Like, when I was doing insurance training, I recently changed jobs for anyone that doesn't know online, but they issued like a statement that had like the different price tags of like people's bodies and stuff. And you could work out that it'd be like 2 fingers and a tooth would equal an arm, and things like that within insurance. Fucking what? Scary stuff, man. I'll try and find it. In fact, I don't know where I'll find it, but I'll give it a go. So he's never been charged with the murders by the Belizean authorities or by any other authority, and he said that it's a suit based entirely on media reporting. December the 12th come through, and he remembers that date because the night after he arrived in the US is when he first met Janice Dyson, and yeah, apparently she sucked like one. So she was a prostitute. She was a prostitute in South Beach, Miami. They spent a great night together, eventually grew quite fond of each other and married in 2013, where they both moved to Portland in Oregon that year. Apparently, one of the first things she actually said to him, this is an interview as well, was, do you want your dick sucked? You look like you could use your dick sucked. So, nice lady.
Living up to her name.
I assume she was a lot younger than him, judging by some of his things you mentioned. You mentioned he was the 17-year-old at one point when he was in his 60s and whatnot, and I imagine she was a lot younger, perhaps.
He lived his entire life surrounded by guns, women and drugs. You know, he said that he was clean. He said he went to AA, and whether or not he drunk or not was kind of neither here nor there when it came to fucking the amount of drugs that he'd be snorting, like, you know?
Yeah.
So he was in his late 60s and early 70s. It was around that time when he started to be more vocal as to what the internet actually was, or the beast in which it had morphed into was. So he remembers in 2014, he released an app for smartphones called Cognizant. It displayed the information about permissions of other apps installed. It was rebranded called Decentral1. The Android version was free to put out in the Google Store. So he was essentially just warning people about using smartphones, letting them know that the apps are used to spy on clueless customers who didn't read privacy user agreements. But nobody really listened, you know? He even went as far as to go to the DEF CON conference in Vegas to express his concerns in person in front of a real audience, and it was in that year that his old house in Belize was suspiciously burnt down after a raid by the Belizean government. Go figure. So he joined a company then called Everkey in 2016. The main focus was to provide the flaws in recent smartphone security. Companies like Apple and Samsung had no real defense against someone armed and determined with the right gear and knowledge. So that day then, that year, he publicly threw out a stunt that stated that he would decrypt the iPhone. But that's all it was. It was kind of a publicity stunt. I think that was around the time where he started running for president, when he started going off about that stuff. But
was that he was running for president? I thought that was in the build up to the 2020 election.
He ran twice, yeah. He ran once in 2016 for the American president, and then he ran again then for the Libertarian Party in 2020. But May 2016, he joined MGT Investments as his chief executive chairman and CEO. They wanted to rename the company after him, so that would be John McAfee Global Technologies. But there was a dispute over the rights to his own name. Like, how crazy is that? Like, Intel essentially had the rights to his own name. So he shifted MGT's focus to cybersecurity and cryptocurrency, stating that antivirus software is dead. It no longer works. The new paradigm is to stop the hacker from ever getting in. Makes sense? So in MGT, he had his team found a flaw in the Android OS that let him read encrypted messages from WhatsApp, which was a huge blow for like Android and WhatsApp alike. So what he did essentially to do this was send out malware-infected phones to reporters. So they disputed the legitimacy because he had infected it with malware himself so that he could access essentially a backdoor. And yeah, they were like, no, that's not fair. But his point was, it's how the malware got there. That's the story. For him to be able to put it on. Like, so in tandem with that, he was moving MGT's focus to cryptocurrencies. So he thought that it'd make the company money, and they needed to understand the blockchain better in order to like develop new cyber defenses. So as the world is leaning more towards cryptocurrency as the norm these days, especially like he saw this quite a few years back. So crypto kind of enveloped his thoughts for a while. He moved away from the CEO position in order to focus on crypto a little bit more. He tweeted a little prediction in 2017. He said that if the price of Bitcoin wouldn't jump to 500,000 within 3 years, I'll eat my own dick on national TV. So for some reason, after this, potential investors were pushing MGT to kick him to the curb. So he thought, fuck it. In 2016, he already had his hat in the ring for President of the United States with the Libertarian Party. So with his primary goal, that'll be focused on cybersecurity because the next war won't be fought with nuclear weapons, and we needed these cyber defenses. So in 2019, someone asked him about taxes, and this is another quote there, actual direct quote. So he contended that by saying that taxes are illegal. I told him I haven't filed a tax return since 2010, and that I was a prime target of the US Inland Revenue Service. During that time, he also doubled down on the Twitter prediction of Bitcoin hitting 1 million by the end of 2020. Little did anyone know that the predictions were just a ruse to get new users to join up. Like, he did say that Bitcoin, and this is a quote, Bitcoin is ancient technology with limited potential. People were paying him though to promote their own coins.
Yeah.
Like, you check him a few million, he'd promote the coin, and then that same day, like Elon Musk, whenever he fucking says something about anything, the stocks fucking...
Elon Musk basically controls the crypto market. Like, it's ridiculous how much one tweet from him can just either make it rise or fall. It's insane. Like,
it's not just crypto though; it happens all over IPOs. It opens, shares and all that.
Yeah,
it's mental. Like.
It's kind of it's sort of insider trading, really, when you think about it.
But, well, that's it. That's why some of the authorities were after McAfee as well. Because I'm surprised they haven't pulled up Musk on it. Like, my hair's doing my fucking nut in, boys.
The whole tax thing though. He said he hasn't filed a tax return since 2010. So was that when he was in Belize and that? Or was that? Yeah. So because I know American citizens, even if they don't live in America, so say you're a registered American citizen, but you live most of your life in France, you've still got to pay tax to the US.
What?
Because it's
fucking weird now.
Your freedom is a privilege of the American government, Tom. So,
oh my God, yeah, freedom isn't free.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure you've still got to pay tax towards. I don't know how much, but you still got to pay tax, and that's what pisses off some Americans who there's some people who emigrate to Australia and stuff, and some of them sort of renounce their US citizenship in favor of their new citizenship, or even go to Canada and places like that. Yeah. So I imagine that's why, because he probably didn't have anything to do with the US for so many years, and then they're like, "Oh, you didn't give us any money for." He's like, "Well, yeah, because I wasn't fucking there." Which I think that's completely valid argument.
That is fair enough. If that is the case, then yeah, that's completely fair enough. Jesus, I didn't know that. How do people argue for American freedom? Oh, no, I'm not going to get into that. So
it's a whole other debate, that is.
Yeah. So he also, after failing the 2016 election, he ran for the president campaign again in 2020 from a yacht that seemed to just kind of drift around international waters. It was, just popping up all over the place via tweets and all that. So I do have a bit of a soundbite that I'd like Rich to play here.
I think the fundamental difference between myself and every other contender in every party is that I have no shame. Yes, I've been in jail. I've taken drugs. More drugs than you in the audience can ever fucking carry. Everything that I have done, I own.
Nice.
So now we're moving on to the more recent activities, which would be his arrest and his death. So in October 2020, he was arrested in Spain whilst trying to board a flight to Turkey. So he was accused of failing to file tax returns for 4 years by concealing assets and having his income paid into bank accounts and crypto exchange accounts in the name of nominees. So extradition from Spain to the US was authorised, and he was to be sent to the US to face charges, but he knew deep down that these charges were politically motivated and he intended to fight them at all costs. That again, the political motivation, that's just paranoia kicking up again, that is. I'd say at least anyway, definitely. So that was when he died. A statement from the US Justice Department had said that everything indicates that he could have died by suicide, but that goes against a statement that he made saying, "I am content, I have friends, the food is good, all is well. Know that if I hang myself, a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine. But the truth, a la Epstein, is going to remain hidden in a... Let's be fucking fair." So I've got a little bit more here now. I'm not sure how true this is, or it's all to do with a Q kind of conspiracy bullshit.
Right.
If you'd hear about that. So within 30 minutes of the news of the death being shared there, McAfee's Instagram uploaded a capital Q on like a white background.
I knew this.
So the pictures have since been deleted, but it was a reference to the possible dead man switch, in which the apparent 31 plus terabytes of data incriminating people in power will be released if McAfee were to ever die, which, he's going to die one time and he's kicking on. But the switch is yet to trigger, if there ever was one, leaving the people to believe that he could even possibly still be alive somewhere. But he was a bluffer and a con man for like a lot of it, so who's to say that he wasn't just bullshitting about the dead man switch anyway?
We're still waiting on his switch, aren't we? We're still waiting on it.
Who's to say though that his switch has triggered, but parties have managed to suppress it getting out?
Yeah,
that's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing.
There is that possibility. He sounds batshit crazy, but that is a possibility.
So what I've said then is what he's been willing to share about his private life, or what's leaked about his life when he's been alive. But now, unfortunately, he's dead. So who knows kind of what's inside Pandora's box just waiting to jump out. But I don't think him dying is going to be the last we're going to hear of John McAfee.
No. I don't think so. I think bide your time with it.
Yeah.
I think like you look at the whole Epstein thing. Like after he died, so much stuff just started coming out of the woodwork, didn't it? So we might see more stuff like that. Maybe, like say, maybe something, if there is a dead man switch, something will leak out of that. And some message boards somewhere. But the thing is, how do you know how legitimate things are? It's like for his dead man switch needs to be ironclad. It needs to have evidence left and right for these different things. They need to have traces and a paper trail and all this stuff back to these people who are incriminated. And another thing is he says people in power, so I would imagine that there's going to be like big sort of corporation like US corporations and CEOs, possibly presidents of countries, prime ministers, things like that. I mean, I would love it if they got some dirt on some of the MPs we have in London. That'd be fantastic. The rate we're going there, but.
Let's be fair though, what's the most that happens? There's a story in the Mirror, there's a story in the Sun, and then like 2 weeks later, people's attention span has moved on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look at the Hancock scandal. That's more or less forgotten about now.
Yeah.
He exists only for memes now, didn't he? Like, you know what I mean? That's it. Like,
look at Prince Andrew.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
people haven't forgotten about it, but it's not like, anything's being done about it.
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell's fucking court case is still in proceeding now. It's coming towards an end, though.
I haven't kept up with that at all, to be honest with you.
That's what I mean, though. Epstein was all over the news, but she is buried, like, they're suppressing, they're releasing bits and bobs here and there, and you can find it if you look, but it's not in your face like Epstein was. Whereas she played her part just as much, if not more, than he fucking did, to be honest.
Yeah. Like to use the bloody Tory party in the UK as an example, you seem to get an MP that gets caught up. It's like it's a rotation. It's a revolving door that happens like every 6 months or 8 months, it seems. You get a Tory MP that's caught up in a scandal and he's forced to resign. He doesn't get sacked. He's forced to resign, and then someone takes his place. And then another 6 to 8 months down the line, it happens again with another Tory MP. It's just chopping and changing all. You're thinking, like, these are really bad people that are in charge of our country. Why isn't anything being done about this?
Exactly.
So it would not surprise me, like, if there are not just the UK government, but other governments around the world that have serious dirt on them. And I'm looking at the US thinking there's tons of dirt there.
Oh, God.
You look at places like Russia as well, tons there. I mean, we know there's tons there, but and they know that we know there's tons of dirt there as well, and they're like, "What are you going to fucking do about it?" Like, it's just like we don't care. So
yeah, well, McAfee said that, like, in regards to the Dead Man Switch, the people that he didn't like and didn't like him were actually like fighting to keep him alive because if he died, just to cover their own fucking asses, like.
What a situation to be in.
I would have voted for him. Fuck it. I think he would have been, a breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh air. Like that time Russell Brand run for fucking Prime Minister. Breath of fresh air.
To be fair to Russell Brand, he is like completely done a 180 on what he was before. He's like a proper chilled out guy now. He has his own
guru, isn't he?
Yeah, he has his own political views or whatever. But he had an interview recently in the last couple of weeks with Ben Shapiro. That was the most random. Like, I did not expect to see Russell Brand on the Ben Shapiro show for a second, and vice versa, because Ben Shapiro's on Russell Brand's show as well. Russell Brand is left leaning, and Ben Shapiro is very hard right, and you think that's just not going to happen. But they had a very civilized conversation, and Russell Brand didn't agree with everything that Ben was saying, and vice versa. But it was a civil conversation, and you don't get that very often in the political spectrum these days. When it's two opposing sides. Maybe if someone's more central, maybe that's why. Maybe because Russell Brand is probably more towards the centre left than he is far left, I would say. Maybe that's why, but you don't get it very often, and that just shows his character and how he sort of evolved. Because I would have thought that Russell Brand of years gone by, when he was at the height of his celebrity, he would have been shouting and raving at Ben Shapiro,
There's several videos that I've watched recently about his sort of transcend into what he is now and what he was before and things like that. That aside, like, the mainstream media and stuff wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. At one point, he was popping up in like Hollywood movies, voiceover, stuff like that. Because of, I think, what he's become now, though. I think he's fully comfortable with being away from that, as well as them just totally distancing himself from him.
That's what
he knows that. He knows he's no longer in that Hollywood bubble then.
Yeah. He seems awake and he seems happy,
Totally.
Which is rare.
Basically, that's exactly what he said in that interview with Ben Shapiro. As I was like, oh, that's pretty good, Fair play to him. He said what did he say? Hollywood is a disease.
Yeah.
And
you can see that he's totally, happy with where he's at now, though. You can see that a million times, like.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What made me laugh was how they had obviously pre-planned, because Ben Shapiro likes to squeeze in his paid promotions about ExpressVPN, and they really obviously shoehorned in an an ExpressVPN ad where Ben Shapiro asks about his internet privacy, and he's like, I don't know, Ben. What should I do about my internet privacy? It's like, Christ alive.
Oh my God.
So blatant, but there we go.
It's just another example of a sponsored politician, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good God.
I mean, like, I don't know how good Russell Brand would be as a politician, but this is the thing. It's completely unknown, and people choose to vote for either party because these people are trained in politics. But what's to say that, hiring someone who was a university professor for 25, 30 years wouldn't do a better job than Boris Johnson?
That's exactly it. Like,
yeah,
breath of fresh air. That's what we need. I'm telling you.
Exactly what we need.
Is Crowder and fucking what's happening with Crowder and fucking Ethan situation? What's going
Ethan
on with
Klein
that
and Stephen Crowder. Oh my God! Right, this is it's kind of. I think that the ship has sort of sailed on it now, because I know there was quite a few YouTube channels of both left side and right side that really capitalized on it for to do the algorithm basically did the work for them because it was a hot topic. So essentially, Ethan Klein asked Stephen Crowder. So to give you background on who these people are, Stephen Crowder is he's a right-leaning YouTuber. Essentially, used to work for Fox News. He's very much into gun ownership and all this stuff.
You know him from the meme.
You know him from the Change My Mind meme, where a guy sat in the chair drinking a cup and it's got something, change my mind. That's
that's him, is it?
There we go. Stephen Crowder.
Yeah, I didn't realize the meme thing was connected or whatever. Though.
Yeah,
I didn't. Yeah.
So yeah, he's very right leaning, and he bashes the left all the time. Very similar vein to someone like Ben Shapiro, or they've even appeared on each other's shows in the past. So. And then Ethan Klein then is part of a podcast called H3H3. It's a very popular podcast. He used to be someone who was very sort of central and drifted to the right, but has since he's gone back on that completely, and he's very left and very politically correct and all this stuff. And they had a bit of back and forth with Crowder about how he wears a holster when he's doing his podcasts, and calling him names and all this stuff. And they had a bit of back and forth, and eventually, Crowder was like, if you want to come on the show, then we can have a debate. Let's have a debate about the stuff that you disagree with what I'm saying and all that stuff. So Ethan reached out to him and said, yeah, let's do a debate, and they agreed. There was no funny business, just a straight up debate, just two people talking. You can agree, you can disagree, that's fine. It came to the debate, and essentially, when it came to starting the debate, Crowder showed what happened before the debate on his channel, where it was literally those two talking for 2 minutes about just life, essentially, because Crowder's wife had because Crowder's wife is pregnant currently, and she had a health scare thing the other day, so they had to postpone their original date for this podcast, or this debate rather, because of that. So he was basically talking about that, and saying, because Ethan was asking him how his wife was and all this stuff. No, it seemed really fine, to people genuinely having a conversation. And then the debate started. I say debate started. So Crowder starts going into what was it he was going into now? I think it was the CDC, and his views on the CDC and how just do it, bro, or whatever. And as he was doing that, Ethan's end, his video feed switched to a guy called Sam Cedar.
Never heard of him.
So Sam Cedar is a left-leaning YouTuber who is basically the left version of Stephen Crowder or Ben Shapiro. It's a mirror for the opposite team, essentially. And he has tried to debate Stephen Crowder for years, and supposedly Crowder has avoided him at all costs. He's avoided him at there's a thing called Politicon. I didn't even know that existed. It's a convention for politics, and people debate and all that. So he avoided him at that, and it's a whole other thing. So he appears on screen, and then Crowder sees this, and he sarcastically shouts out. He's like, "Oh no, Sam Cedar, what a fucking nightmare!" like that, which I found quite funny that all the YouTube, the left YouTube channels, saw that as him being serious. It's you can clearly see he's being fucking sarcastic at that point.
What's said just as Cedar comes on the screen? Something like, I don't know, one of his retorts or back to Crowder was like something about fucking Rome guys fucking each other or something.
Oh, yeah, they dress up. Every so often, Stephen Crowder and like his podcast crew dress up. They have like a theme. I think it was in reference to one of those times that they dressed up. Like the guy he has, I can't remember the guy who sits with him. He's a comedian. Like I think in the last one they did, he was dressed in drag, just for a laugh. He's not a drag queen or anything, but he decided to do it just because. I think Stephen Crowder was dressed as Bruce Jenner. Not Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner. Yeah, these are the type of people we're dealing with. Like, but yeah, Sam Cedar then tries to edge in on the debate, but Crowder was like, "No, I'm not debating you. You've just forced your way into a debate where you weren't invited to. I have no time for you. You know, this isn't on. Essentially,
I think, yeah,
so.
It sounds like he's some people say it sounds like he's cowarding out of that, but I think what he said was, if you think you can debate me, then every other hack YouTuber thinks that they can also debate me, and he'll have no time to do anything else.
Yeah,
I think that's fair enough. Like.
It did boil down to a bit of childish sort of like a pissing contest, basically, where like they were going like, I'm not going to debate you because you have like only this many subscribers, whereas I have 5 million. It did get to that point, and you're thinking, oh god, they're actually doing this now. But even before Ethan joined the Zoom call, and Stephen was doing a sound check because he put this out later on as well. He said on camera as they were doing the sound check, he's like, I don't think this guy's even going to debate seriously. He's probably going to surprise me with someone like that Cedar hack or something. He actually predicted what was going to happen before it, and yeah, that was that. And then since then, because Crowder's side ended the call, everyone said that he chickened out. But at the end of the day, they kind of ambushed him, and they said, "Oh yeah, but you do the same with college students. You debate college." It's like he doesn't go up into their face and force them. He actually says, "Do you want the debate?"
They come to him,
and they come to him. You know. So I think, like, I don't agree with either side of this, to be honest. Like,
he's a bit of a troll.
He is. He very much is a troll.
Bit of a troll.
Like, I don't agree with a lot of what he says. I agree with some, but not much. And he comes across as a bit of an arrogant prick as well.
Yeah. Most right people seem to.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The same with Ben Shapiro. He comes across as an arrogant prick. So does, what's his name? Carson Daly?
Daly. Yeah, Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, that's it. I don't take a daily. Tucker Carlson, yeah, he's just a massive bellend. I just could not. He's got that, a punchable face. When someone's got a punchable face,
so it looks like he's made out of plastic, kind of thing. Like.
Yeah. Well, no, but that's a whole different thing, man. That was like, I was following that on YouTube for a while, and I was just like, Jesus, just be thankful that these people are running YouTube channels, not your fucking country, like.
Fully grown men arguing about views. Crazy, man.
I know, like, Jesus, like kids.
Crazy. Thing is, to a lot of people, that actually matters. That's the scary part.
So
yeah,
it goes, yeah. So
it does. I mean, from a business perspective, you can understand it. If you're talking business, like, and YouTube is your job, then yeah, I guess that's fair to talk about. It's like, we've got 1 million subscribers. We want to get 2 million by the year because, we'll make this much more money and then we can do this much more content or all that jazz. I can totally understand that. But when you're literally on camera saying, like, oh, you've only got like 1 million subscribers, I've got 5. You're like, fucking grow up. Like, come on. Jesus.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for watching, everyone. We really do appreciate everyone that watches every one of these, and stick around. We'll see you next time.
I know.
Thank you very much. Thank you.